Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we are continuing our ongoing coverage of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. So, today I'm going to do something that I don't do very often, and that is offer rebuttal to other content sites, YouTube channels. Now, specifically, the reason I'm doing this, and I have to do it, is because you, the viewer, are getting wrong information. And getting wrong information while watching what is happening within this war is not good. Even if you are a supporter, a diehard supporter of the Ukrainian cause, if you're a supporter of the Russian cause, it is very important to know what's happening on the ground. Now, this site that this channel that I'm talking about, I keep saying site, so forgive me, is Davidov's site, Denny Davidov's site. And he's a commercial airline pilot, a former commercial airline pilot, who offers commentary about the ongoing war. And does he have a prior military background? No, he doesn't. Many folks believe that because you are an airline pilot, especially here in the United States, you have a military background. Many do. Many have been in the U.S. Air Force, and they do have that background. Obviously, that's where many of them start. But in the case of this guy, no, he doesn't have the military background, and he has fled Ukraine, and he's now residing in another country. And he states that because he doesn't have a military background, he has to be exempt from service in the Ukrainian army. Now, I take exception to that, but, that's his choice. Whatever. Great. But more importantly, it's the information that you are getting from this channel that tends to be mistaken. And I have heard this narrative time and time again by Davidov. And when you hear this narrative, and it's a very specific narrative to strategy and tactics in regards to modern warfare. So Davidov believes that capturing quote-unquote high ground, hills, mountains, puts you in the advantage in modern war. And that is absolutely not the case. Yes, if we go back to a time of musketry and rifles, yes, absolutely, taking high ground was effective. You could see distance, you could see the enemy, possibly couldn't see you, so forth and so on. In modern warfare, taking the quote-unquote high ground, taking terrain features, taking hills, can be incredibly dangerous. And I can tell you, back when I was a Cold War military man in the early 90s, U.S. doctrine was not to take terrain features. So why? Why would the U.S. not look to take hills and terrain features? Now, we would use those hills maybe as observation posts. You would do reverse slope, get defilade, and use it as an OP. But using it as to stage company, battalion-sized elements on these terrain features was a death sentence. Soviet doctrine, Russian doctrine, at the time, is to just show the living crap out of terrain features. It's not a place you want to be. And then furthermore, with In the modern age that we're in now, you have technology that has the ability to act as a high altitude terrain feature, drones, aircraft, what have you. And the opposing force can see you on that terrain feature. They know you're there. So the idea that taking terrain feature is something that is effective, something that is helpful, something that is going to turn the tide of a battle is just, you're getting bad information. Again, any terrain feature that is going to be occupied in this conflict by either side, and even more so with the Russians, because they have air power, they have an air force, and they have a lot of artillery. So any Ukrainian units that would move to these so-called high ground, they're going to get annihilated. So it's just something you don't do, and I think it's a byproduct of just his lack of understanding about modern war. You watch TV and you think that, oh, you take a hill, that you now have the advantage. Guys, that's not the case. It's just not what happens. U.S. military doesn't do it. We stay away from terrain features unless they're being used as an observation post. Yes, counterinsurgency operations, we would do that. We would take terrain features if we knew the enemy did not have the capability of just annihilating that terrain feature, which the Russians do. So if the Ukrainians do take a terrain feature and they occupy that with actual maneuver elements, companies, battalions, they're going to take massive casualties. And again, it's just the whole narrative is just completely wrong. And I get it. It's just lack of understanding. It's not his fault. He's simply stating what popular culture has kind of ingrained into his mind without fully understanding what's happening on the ground. And he's got he had outside resources. He had a buddy apparently who was in the Ukrainian military. And unfortunately, that buddy's pushing up daisies now, or sunflowers, or whatever. Sorry about that. But again, yes, taking terrain features, taking the quote-unquote high ground, it can be incredibly lethal. And there's not much to report today in terms of what is happening on the ground. You can see what the Russian strategy is right now. They have decided to hold all terrain that they have taken, while at the same time the Russians are looking to expand and reconstitute forces for further operations. And we're not just looking at the reconstituting of existing forces, but the expansion of the Russian military, the expansion of the Russian ground forces, the addition of new technologies, new doctrine is being implemented into Russian force structure. And we're seeing that. So again, I just had gotten to the point, and he has a lot of subscribers. A lot of people watch his channel. And a lot of people probably that don't have a military background that are trying to get information, and at the same time they have taken to the Ukrainian cause, maybe without fully understanding the history of the conflict, understanding both sides' perception, possibly. In the U.S. here, the United States loves an underdog, especially if the underdog is doing better than expected. People are going to gravitate towards that team or that side. And then inherently, again, without fully understanding what's happening, going to support that side. And again, we talk about democracies, we talk about transparency, we talk about corruption. again, most people who have taken to the hardcore Ukrainian side have not done their due diligence. They don't understand everything that's in this conflict. They see it from the perspective of the mainstream media in terms of black and white. The Russians invaded Ukraine, and the Russians are evil. The Russians are orcs. The Ukrainians are angelic creatures, and that's kind of where we sit. But again, as I've talked about before, there's more to it than that. And no, I am not pro-Putin. I am not pro-Zelensky at all. I'm pro-nobody. I'm pro-free thought, not mandated thought. Okay, and that's very important to understand that. I think for myself. So that's where we set for today. We will have more as we continue to cover the front lines and ongoing operations by both sides. Again, status quo continues with the Russians operating in very fortified positions, not giving up any ground to the Ukrainians, very little ground. If anything, the Ukrainians are positioning themselves in terms of these 500,000 meter move forwards into existing pre-defined Russian kill boxes with heavy artillery and aircraft and what have you. And that's where we set for today. More to come very, very soon. And as always, I appreciate you joining us. And further, as always, have a good day.